Hey everyone, Diet Seth here. I've been promising some of you for quite a while now that I would get you some videos of my N-scale projects, and so here's the first installment of that. This one is a custom graffiti project that I'm making for my friend Nancy. She has no idea that I'm making it at the time of this filming, but by the time the video hits YouTube, she will already have the car in her hands. So Nancy, I hope you're enjoying it on your layout as much as I enjoyed painting it. So you can see in the background here is a picture of my friend Nancy. I stole this from one of her YouTube videos, but she had this yarder graffiti painted legally on one of her cars that operates locally, hauls trash in her area, and I knew when I saw the video that I absolutely had to try replicating it in N-scale. So with a little bit of digging, I was able to find this fine Intermountain car that has the same exact paint scheme on it. And with a little bit of painting, I was able to come up with this. So this is as close as I could get with my limited graffiti skills to the original. I've never painted any real graffiti before. I've done a little bit with my N-scale stuff, but I have very limited expertise there. So I had a lot of learning to do, but I'm really, really happy with how it's turned out. The original also had a coal load, as these cars were originally used for hauling coal. Since they're now used for garbage, I did create a custom garbage load out of just little bits of recycling and foam and anything that I could find and blend and paint. You can see some of the detail there. Very, very happy with how that turned out. Again, not quite perfect, but for my first time doing any of this, I'm really quite pleased with it. So on the other side, also changed the lettering there to match the current, the prototypical WWPX. And the car number 1024. So I have that on this side as well. You can see a little bit of the extra detail and the little NH yard limit down in the bottom corner, her tag. So really happy to make this. It's just been so much fun, such a learning experience. So I was just going to leave the video at that. However, Nancy now has the car in her hands, and I've had a number of requests since she received it to show how I've made it. So I'm including a little bit of a slideshow since I didn't take any video of the actual process. So the first thing I did was hopped on Google and saw if I could find one of these models in N-scale. It did take a little bit of research and I had to get a little bit creative, but I did find this special run from Intermountain. And the only place I could find them was a website called prairieshadows.com. They're a model railroad retailer out of Canada. So ordered a couple of those just in case something went horribly wrong with the first one. And I would have a backup that way because you never know. The next step was to take a still from one of Nancy's videos. I just took a screenshot from this one while it paused and printed this out on my printer. Then using the printed copy and a blank sheet of paper and a light pad that my wife uses for her art, I was able to trace the border of the yarder graffiti and just kind of get it onto a sheet of paper. Once I had that, I scanned the sheet into my computer and was able to downsize it and find the right size. A lot of trial and error, just printing smaller and smaller versions, cutting it out and measuring it up to the car itself to see how it fit. As you can see in this picture here, I did do a full practice run with paint on a piece of paper as well, just to see if I was actually going to be able to pull that off before touching a paintbrush to the train car itself. And once I did that, I was ready to move on. So once I found the size that was just about right, I took a sheet of paper, printed it out, and put a couple layers of blue painter's tape on the logo and sent it back through the printer. Then I was able to use a sharp hobby knife to cut out the logo from the blue painter's tape and use it as a stencil. This step took a little bit of trial and error, but I was able to find about where the logo should go on the car. And once I did, fastened the tape down and brought out the airbrush. And I gave it a few layers of white paint just to give the colors as much vibrancy and brightness as possible. I figured they could possibly be pretty dull if I just painted all the bright colors directly on black. So I ended up doing 3 or 4 layers of white and then finished it up with a couple coats of gloss coat. Once the gloss coat had dried, I brought out one of my mechanical pencils and just kind of sketched out the lines of roughly where the letters should be on the Yarder logo. I started filling in the pink first. I had a couple different pinks that I wanted to try, and I tried starting with the brighter pink. I ended up adding a little bit of other pinks just to kind of get the color quite right. You can see here I added peach and then kind of an orangey yellow in the center. I also had to blend to get that color just right. With the peach, I found a paint color that was just absolutely perfect for that. You can see another layer of pink has been added to get a little bit more thickness in there. Here I've added another different color of pink to kind of get the tone just right, and also added more layers of the peach and orange, and started adding in some of the dark blue around the lettering. In this picture I added another layer of dark blue paint as kind of the base coat there. I will be adding lighter blues as you progress towards the center of each of those blue sections. I also added some of the orange around the bases of some of the letters, kind of the behind there. I added orange on both the left and the right side of the graffiti and was really almost surprised at how much of a difference the white background paint makes. The orange directly on the black took quite a few layers before anything really started to show any color. So on the right side, there's a number of layers of orange. On the left, I think was just 1 layer. And here the car is with a few more layers of orange, and started to add some of the blue. Also added some of the orange splotches at the top of the lettering and some above the graffiti itself. You can kind of feel that the graffiti is really starting to come into view here. It's really just starting to look like something. And this was the biggest step right here. I did add more orange, added a little bit more of the blues, and then I added 2 or 3 layers of gloss coat, and once those dried, finished with a very, very fine tipped Sharpie. I went around all the lettering and did all the black markings, and it just really brought everything together. And onto the decals. Added the WWPX 1024 on either side. Also I added the 2 white R's inside the heart logo. I still need to get around those with a Sharpie just to add a little black outline, but before I do that, I'm going to work on the trash load. So as previously stated in the video, when the car came in the mail, it originally had a coal load in it, and since this car hauls trash, I figured I've got to find some trash to haul with it. So I did look around online a little bit, tried to find some end scale trash loads, and didn't find anything that I was happy with, so figured I'd make my own. So in this picture is some of the stuff that I used. I found chunks of it's a foam board material that was used on one of my radio controlled airplanes that didn't live through its last flight, so I took a few chunks of that. And the blue and red are pieces of recyclable container lids that I had just pulled out of recycling. Shoved everything in my blender and gave it a few spins around and got it to this nice consistency. Then I took some plastic wrap to protect the car and filled it in, and loaded a bunch of trash in the car and soaked it with a mixture of Elmer's glue, water, and isopropyl alcohol. The glue took a few days to dry completely, but once it was done drying, I pulled this out, and this is what the trash load looked like. I gave it a quick test fit in the car to see if it would work, and after a little bit of trimming, I was pretty happy with it. So then I took the trash load and painted it with a black acrylic paint. I let that dry overnight, and then painted it with a layer of a very dark gray paint. Didn't get into all the cracks and crevices with this, but just kind of tried to give the whole thing a layer of slightly lighter color. and with maybe 6 or 7 other shades of gray, progressively worked lighter and lighter. Eventually just covered it with a white paint very sparingly and kind of let the paint all blend together, and it gave it this really gave it this look of a lot of depth to it, and I really am very happy with how that turned out. Once the gray paint had dried, I took a small paintbrush and a bunch of random colors and added little bits of paint to some of the pieces of trash in the load, just to kind of give that extra little look of realism to the trash itself. I also took a piece of styrofoam and cut it down so it was the right height to hold the trash load at the correct level, and painted that black so it wouldn't be seen when looking down. I ended up doing this whole process again and creating a whole new trash load. I wasn't quite happy with how this one fit, so the one that ended up going in her car is slightly different, but I went through all the same process. And here's the final result. You can see I did end up going back and putting a black outline around the R letters in the heart, and I gave the whole thing another 2 layers of gloss coat to finish everything in, and then glued the trash load inside the car. So thank you so much for watching. Again, just really had a great time putting this together, learned a lot, and I'm so happy that you're enjoying it, Nancy. So thanks for watching. Take care.